Happy Wednesday. I had to think about that for a second. Welcome to this session on social media for social impact. I am so excited that my amazing creative director, Algerlyn Sperber, was eager and able to lead the session for us today. Background on this session is this, we consider ourselves a social impact brand, and we have been very cognizant of the conversations going on in the world right now in terms of social justice and racial inequality. And we think it's really, really important that folks understand how to be a part of this conversation and how to stand up for their values in a real way online. And what we've seen in our community is a lot of people want to say something, but they're a little hesitant to. They're a little scared because they're worried about how it might repel people away from their brand, or they're just not sure how to leverage social media in this kind of way. So that's why Algerlyn is here today, is to give you some thoughts and advice as to how we see some of the best brands navigating this climate, and also the things that you can be doing to make your brand stand out while also standing up for the things that you believe in. So that's my intro spiel. Algerlyn, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Madeline. Hello, everybody, to Social Media for Social Impact. So today we're going to be talking about how to use the different social media channels that you are on and your company is on, and how to share the message that you want to share with your followers, with your community, and with people that you haven't even connected with before. So before we get into this, I want to share the why I'm even talking about this, and why I even have a leg to stand on to talk about this. I have over 10 years of experience in digital marketing. I am a former mommy blogger, and if you are familiar with mommy bloggers, because now we are in the age of influencers on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, you know that we have a voice and we like to share that voice. I am a founder of a social impact company that promotes menstrual hygiene and removing the stigma of menstruation. I have been a key player in utilizing social media for nonprofits and sharing their message and the social impact that they have been doing, and sharing with not just their social media followers, but also stakeholders that are involved in their organization. And just a fun fact, my favorite causes right now in nonprofits, especially in the climate that we are currently in, are related to menstruation and helping to remove youth homelessness. You'll hear probably, that period poverty and youth homelessness impacts a lot of people of color. And so I'm very passionate about these causes right now. So let's talk about what we're going to review together today. And I want everybody that is listening to this to just take a collective breath and really look inside themselves before you start doing any of this, because you really do have to do a deep dive of understanding what your purpose is, what your core values are, before you start sharing a message and understanding what that message should be and sound like. So we'll talk a lot about human-centered marketing, because social impact impacts humans. Yes, it can impact environment and other social causes, but if you think about it, the core always comes down to the human. And we'll talk about why social media, and go over a few brand examples. I don't want to go over too many, because I'm sure we're following all different types of brands and organizations that you may have seen a shift or a pivot in the tone and voice and content that they're sharing. So I'm just going to go over a couple of brands that I think have been doing this in more of an evergreen way, and also have shifted and pivoted during our current social climate. We'll talk about diversifying your feed. How diverse is it? Who are you following? Why are you following them? And how is that impacting your vision and what you share? And knowing your why and your how. Again, that's like digging deep into what your purpose is and what you're going to be sharing and how you are going to be able to use your voice and your platform to make a positive impact. And we'll also give you some key takeaways so you have some actionable things to take with you. All right, so when it comes down to making a social impact, really, you're doing human-centered marketing. You're designing whatever your marketing plan and strategy around humans. And if you think about humanity and humans, like, what do we care about? We care about people. We care about the people close to us. And for some of us, we care about the people that are globally not even within arm's reach of us. And so you really need to think about what your brand, what your voice and your tone are going to be, and how are you going to map out that strategy. So for example, if you think about Tom's shoes or even Patagonia, but let's focus on Tom's right now. The founder from the beginning knew that for every shoe sold, they wanted to donate shoes to people in need. And that has been their ethos, that has been their core value, and that has been the messaging for them from the beginning. And I'll show some examples of brands that have pivoted from being the, business as usual to not business as usual, and utilizing their platform to amplify other people's voices. So understand your brand and company's core values. Write them out if you don't have them. And the way that you can do it is you can write down a list, several pages even if you need to, of what you care about, what is valuable to you, and what are these impacts or changes that you want to make, and what is this legacy that you want to leave behind. And then after you write down this list, you want to circle all the ones that really resonate with you, that punch you in the gut or touch you in the heart, really deep. And being transparent. So if you'll see in your feed probably that more brands or even media outlets have been transparent about where they stand in the Black Lives Matter movement, in how we take care of people during COVID, and the changes and pivots that they're making for their company. You'll see some companies talking about, this is what our current leadership team looks like, and this is what we're going to do to make sure that we are more inclusive. So being transparent about that, and consistently demonstrating to your target and your stakeholders that you are a human-centered company and brand, that you actually care and you have a purpose. So that's human-centered marketing. And the one about this to remember is, when you're doing human-centered marketing, you are really thinking about not just what your core values and your transparency, but you're also remembering how you're going to meet people where they're at, and not just be a broadcaster, but an engager to meet them where they're at. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So why use social media to make an impact? Well, depending on what kind of phone you use, I use an iPhone, and I get notifications every Sunday that tells me how much I'm on my phone. And so if you're on the phone for more than 8 hours a day, I mean, that's a lot, but that's probably pretty standard. But people are always constantly on their phone, and which apps do they have on their phone? They have WhatsApp, they have Facebook, they have Instagram, LinkedIn. Depending on what kind of category or vertical that you're in and how mobile and social media engaged you are, you probably have these apps on your phone. So why wouldn't you use these channels to reach your target audience? Because there are 3.5 billion humans using social media across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all of them. There's tons. So there's a big reach. You can have a local reach, and then you can have a global reach, depending on what kind of impact you're looking to make. You can do geo-targeting on those. You can do it organically. Facebook has a geo-targeting function. So for example, if you only want to target people in the Seattle area, because there's all these different new changes for masks requirements, or you want to know, you want to be able to reach people that are at the protests or, you know, outside of the protests, whatever it is that you want to geo-target, you can utilize Facebook for that. You can also utilize Twitter and other geo-targeting capabilities on social networks, but Facebook is the biggest one to be able to geo-target. Engagement and community. So if you remember, the word social is in social media, it's important to engage. So there's always these opportunities to stay constantly engaged and to communicate with your community. It's free to use unless you're doing advertising. There is that advertising component that you can use, and just about all of the social networks have those capabilities. But in terms of being able to keep things cost effective, you can use these channels for free. You can use them to broadcast, listen, connect with your current and potential community. Hashtags are really helpful in being able to expand your reach on social network. You can also utilize social media. If you look at your search section of Instagram, if you're an Instagram user, you can see all of these different suggestions based off of who you're following and the hashtags you're following and the people that you're engaging with. You'll get all different kinds of suggestions to help diversify your feed, to help you identify new people to engage with, to even find new followers. So these are perfect channels for engaging with current people and new people. And then there's the whole real-time component. If you're very active on Twitter, you have a lot to say, that's an awesome channel. I mean, if you can keep up with everything that is happening on the feed, it's a great channel to be connected in. Otherwise, there's great scheduling components. You can use tools like Hootsuite, Sprout Social, or Buffer to be able to schedule content based off of what is happening, and you have a certain campaign mapped out. You can schedule those posts to go out, but don't forget to have that real human touch when you are posting things. So if people are commenting on your post, don't forget to engage in those too, especially if they have a question.
Can I ask you a question there, Aljalyn? So in terms of that real time versus scheduled sharing, what are some of the advice you've given to people lately about just being cognizant about editing some of their scheduled posts to make sure that they're not appearing tone deaf?
Yeah, so depending on, again, your core values and your company's ethos, it's important to consistently check your scheduled content. So if you map out your content a month out and say that you care about Black Lives Matter, or you care about all these different updates happening surrounding COVID and how it's impacting people's lives, it's really important to either check the captions and see if they are relevant or if they are sensitive to the situation. And if they are not, to make small changes. You don't have to make big changes, because depending on what that content is, it could be a little bit evergreen, but you'll just have to change the caption to make it more relevant so people will want to engage with you on that one. So that's real-time and scheduling component, but that was a great question. You know, just constantly check your marketing or social media calendar to see, like, okay, well, Easter is happening, or actually, like, Independence Day is a good one. Independence Day is coming up. So is the content that I'm sharing, you know, before and on that day, is it sensitive to the situation? Is it relevant? It's just, you have to remember that it's not business as usual if you want to make a social impact. So be cognizant of the tone, voice, and messaging that you're sharing. Okay, so let's go over a couple brands or a few brands that are using their voice for a positive social impact. And so again, some of these have been doing this for a while, and then some of these have made pivots and changes based off of what's been happening in the world or recalibrating. All right, so Seventh Generation, for those of you who are not familiar with that brand, they are an organic and more natural household products. They have cleaning products, they have diapers, they have menstrual products, all different types of household products for people. So last year, around August 2019, there was this shift for Seventh Generation from just posting about their products, sharing different features and benefits of why to use their products. But with the lead up to the climate strike, they shifted everything from being so product focused to being cause and social impact focused. And they have been like that for almost a year. It's been promoting different causes like the climate strike, like ending period poverty, like making people feel safe at home and out in public during COVID, and currently now with Black Lives Matter. Their ethos has always been human-centered, and they definitely started showing that starting August 28th, 2019 of last year in their content. They promoted the Not Business as Usual for the climate strike that happened on September 20th. And that climate strike was, I believe, going against some policies that the administration was trying to set. So they were working with different brands and influencers to help amplify the voice and amplify that reach to promote caring about the earth and caring about humans. So them having over 100,000 followers on just Instagram alone, but their reach is even bigger than that, they understood that they had to use their platform and their channel to promote more awareness about taking care of our planet and our humans. The next example is the Girlfriend Collective. They're an ethical activewear company. On Instagram alone, they have over 300,000 followers, and their content had been pretty inclusive, but when Black Lives Matter started to amplify over the past month, they recalibrated their content and their messaging and their tone, and they published a post that talked about the changes and shifts that they were making internally. They took time to listen to their followers, to listen to what was happening, and really talk about the changes that they needed to make. So they talked about how they're helping and donating to BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, and donating to those different communities and organizations. But they also talked about what their leadership looked like, what their staff looked like, and what their partners look like. And if you looked at that post, you could see that it was primarily Caucasian females on that team, with some people of color sprinkled in there. And so they talked about what they're going to do for the next month to make changes, positive changes within their organizations, and then also the evergreen changes that they're making. And they have been sticking to that, to the "this is a movement, not a moment" ethos and mindset ever since they published that post. I believe it was 2 weeks ago. So we're still early in all of this. The next one, or example, is iFundWomen. It's a crowdfunding platform that promotes and supports startups founded by women. So ever since COVID and quarantine happened, they have been big proponents and working with partners to help find grants for women-owned businesses, for startups. So they went from just being a crowdfunding platform to being a platform to help small businesses get through this pandemic. They worked with Visa to get grants for, I believe it was 10 small businesses for $50,000. And then they've been working with other different organizations to get grants and funding to women of color owned businesses. And during this month of June, because it's Pride Month, they've been utilizing their platform to not just like support and promote different LGBTQIA owned businesses, but also helping to find opportunities to help get them funded. So again, instead of just keeping it business as usual as a crowdfunding platform, as a coaching platform, they use their entire network to help people get through 2 different pandemics. So they've been doing a great job of utilizing their voice and their power for good. And there's tons of different companies out there, but these were 3 notable brands that I wanted to highlight that have really shifted their business.
I want to just hop in and ask another question here, because these are great examples of people who have committed to doing the work, I think, from a long-term perspective. And we definitely see a lot right now where some brands have done a single post or made a single statement, and it's really missed the mark. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what is the difference between creating something that's evergreen and really about, you know, shifting the ethos of the brand as opposed to just making a single statement?
That's a good question. So if you can remember the Blackout Tuesday that happened, 3 weeks or so ago, there were several brands, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of different brands that posted a Black square that day, and even individuals. It was in support and in uniting to promote the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, there was the whole controversy of using the hashtag Black Lives Matter with the Blackout Tuesday. And so it was good to see people shift quickly from removing those posts to hashtag Blackout Tuesday rather than just Black Lives Matter. So that was a good quick shift. But and we'll go, the plan was to go into this a little bit later, but for all the different generations that are alive right now, from baby boomers to Gen Z, but especially from Gen X to Gen Z, these consumers, these people love to support cause-oriented brands. They will spend more money with cause-oriented brands or, you know, positive, socially impactful brands that have a purpose. Baby boomers will too, if they can understand how it's impacting someone immediate to them, like their grandchildren or their family. But when you think about all these, you know, behaviors, the consumer behaviors, and because all these generations give a damn about who they're giving their money to, they really right now want to give their money to companies that are supporting small businesses, supporting communities through 2 different pandemics, the pandemic of COVID and the 400-year pandemic of racism. So you can't just have one day, 1 week, 1 month of just posting about people's lives mattering, Black Lives Matter, caring about people during quarantine and making sure they're getting through COVID-19. It has to be part of your ongoing marketing strategy. It has to be a part of your core, because there are how many billions of people in the US alone, and how many of them have buying power right now? You'll see in headlines that consumers are calling out businesses that are going back to business as usual. And you'll see that some businesses have even stopped wanting to partner and stop partnerships with other businesses that haven't even stepped up to promote Black Lives Matter or to help other businesses during COVID. So I don't have the stat in front of me right now, but if you do a Google search of Black Lives Matter and businesses, you'll see different headlines come up talking about people either not actually doing the work or businesses not having done the work and will not do the work. And what that looks like in terms of money, a financial impact on their business, it hasn't been shown yet. But if you think about Starbucks and how they weren't letting employees wear Black Lives Matter shirts and then retracting that and letting employees do that, there was a big backlash on that. So that it can't just be a moment, it has to be part of your ongoing marketing strategy. Inclusivity has to be your brand. It has to be a part of your brand and your core values and ethos. It doesn't just have to be about including different, people of color, but including people of different sexual orientations, gender identities, disabilities, handy capabilities. Inclusive means inclusive, not just here, your circle can touch our circle. It's all encompassing.
And just to play off that idea of inclusivity, I think too that there's this element of it's got to be inclusive across the brand as a whole as well, right? So for example, I think probably one of the ones that came off as most tone deaf for me personally was Nike made these big bold statements about their commitment to Black Lives Matter and talking about the history of slavery, and then there was a whole level of commentary that bubbled up and was like, but Nike, ostensibly the way you manufacture your products is a form of slavery because you're manufacturing them in countries where people are making much less money, basically a slave wage. So how can you sit here and say that it's a part of your brand to take a stand on this when your business practices reflect otherwise? So I think that there, again, is this heightened demand from consumers to really look not just at what they put out into the world, but how people run the business on the inside and whether or not that those actions that the company takes stands up to whatever they're saying is their core values.
100%. All right. So let's talk about who you're following and why this even matters. So who you're following makes an impact on what shows up in your feed, makes an impact in what you're seeing and the content that you're absorbing and the information that you're absorbing. So your feed says a lot about you, not your owned feed, like your pretty photos and brand sharing on Instagram or on Facebook or Twitter. It's the feed that you're following, your news feed. So are you following individuals, influencers, or companies that you want and believe will help you stay accountable? And not like the, check-in type of accountability, but the content and the tone and messaging and the work that you're putting into either being anti-racist or to making sure that you are staying committed to helping individuals in need or businesses in need. Are you following those people? Are you engaging with those brands or people? Do they bring you inspiration to execute on your social good? And how diverse is your feed? It was interesting. We were on a call with a client last week, and I had shared a screenshot of my search section of Instagram showing all these different types of content about and by people of color. And the client was like, oh, how did you get that? How do I get that to show up on my feed? And I said to them, it's based off of the people that I have been following. So my feed is pretty diverse. If you look at my feed, it's either lots of art illustrations or rainbows, but or colorful interior or yummy food, but That's been my feed, my own personal feed. So if you think about your own personal feed and your company's feed, what are you feeding yourself? Stay on top of your inbox. So not your email inbox, because I'm sure we're all really busy with all those, hundreds of messages in our email inbox. I'm talking about your direct messages. I'm talking about your private messages or your comments. Stay on top of them. People are going to be questioning you. They're going to be supportive of you, but they're also going to be skeptical of you. So you'll have a lot of questions posed. And if you have a good, social media response management system, then this will be easy for you, super easy. But if you're not used to it, you'll want to set something up like reminders. So if you use Hootsuite, you can set up notification systems for your feed on like different comments that come in. Or Facebook has a free one. If you have your Instagram connected to it, you can get those notifications even on your app, and then you can reply. But stay consistent and check your inbox throughout the day for your direct messages and comments, and just be transparent about the work that you're doing, because because I myself am a consumer too, we want to know what you're doing, but we don't expect you to be perfect about it. But the fact that you're trying and that you're putting the work in, that matters more than you being perfect about it. But we also appreciate the reflection period too. Think before you repost or share. So one of our core values, it's a big one, is citing your sources. So it's not just about citing your sources though, it's making sure that you check and double check and triple check. Because right now there's, lots of fake news, lots of different content being shared. Some of us have aunts and uncles that like to share, content on Facebook that isn't really substantiated or validated. So it's important to really take a look at what you're about to share. Make sure it's from a credible source. Double check that it is. Some credible sources, depending on the news that you like to consume, would be like New York Times or Forbes, or even outside of news outlets, Pew Research Center, and other different survey organizations that do the research, or even market research, and journals and reports. Take a look at those. Just double check your sources and then cite your sources. You can easily share a link in your LinkedIn post and your Twitter post. And then if you're sharing on Instagram, make sure you're crediting people, or use link in bio if you have like a Later or a Linktree type of platform that you use to map out different links that you share. Share that too. Cite your sources. Don't ever underestimate the impact that you may have on someone else's life. So this is where I want us all to take a collective breath again, smell the flowers, blow out the candles, because this is where you really need to, this is a lot of information to absorb, but it's really important for you to understand as you're mapping out, if you haven't yet, what you're going to share and what your purpose is. You have to really dig deep, and you have to know that you make an impact on someone, and it may not be millions of people, but you do make an impact at least to one person. And that can be a small business to a global conglomerate that can make the impact. Okay, so let's talk about, so we know what our messaging, what our purpose is, our ethos. We know, some brands that are, how they're doing it the right way, and we have figured out who we want to follow and be inspired by. So let's talk about who you're talking to. So there's different types of people on Instagram versus Facebook, TikTok versus YouTube, Twitter versus LinkedIn. So if you are wanting to share content on Instagram or Facebook, you need to remember that it's a primarily female-focused type of channel that is being that it's a female-focused type of channel. It's millennials, Gen Z is using it, but millennials to about Gen X, and maybe sometimes a baby boomer if grandma follows you on there. But it's primarily Gen Z millennials that are on Instagram. And so what does Gen Z and what do millennials like? We love visuals. So the more video focused or illustrative or just photo focused that it is, the more it will resonate. But even on Instagram and Facebook, we are getting to a point where you can share a tile type of graphic with words on it. Just make sure it's not too lengthy, because we all have the attention span of a goldfish, which is about 3 seconds. So you have about 3 to 5 seconds to capture people's attention. So the more visual video, the bigger it is, the more conversations that you can spark. Facebook is a little bit better with restrictions. There are fewer restrictions, where Instagram, because it is so visual, it has a higher propensity to have visual content reported. So just keep that in mind. But don't get off the path of the message that you want to share. Instagram Live, that is a great way to share your message. You might have seen Madeline, share some Instagram Live or IGTV content. There has been a jump of 70% usage of Instagram Live since COVID, because people want to feel connected, because we're all quarantined, even though, some of us are in phase 2 or about to enter phase 3. We're still, missing that human connection. So Instagram Live is a great way to engage with your followers in real time too. TikTok versus YouTube. So if you are trying to reach Gen Z, TikTok is a great way to connect with people. I think you can share content for up to a minute, whereas YouTube, that is more long, a longer format of video that you want to share. So just think about, TikTok, are you wanting to share something that's quick, snappy, easy to engage with, and highly shareable? Or do you have something more evergreen, brand oriented that you want to share on YouTube? Then that's a great one to do too. Just think about your audience. There's about 2 billion YouTube users, 87% of them are between the ages of 30 to 49. So think about that when you're sharing videos. And then TikTok has been growing, especially since COVID has been happening and quarantine. There's 500 million users and growing, and 25% of them are Gen Z. If you haven't checked out TikTok and you just want to be entertained, I recommend it. And that's also part of, know who you're talking to too, is not just being able to reach people where they're at, but understand the type of content that's getting the most engagement, study it, and then put that as part of your content development planning. Twitter versus LinkedIn. So Twitter, if you like to be fast-paced and share a lot of content and information and really broadcast, Twitter is a great way to connect with people. There's a lot of journalists on Twitter. They're on LinkedIn as well, but they're more active on Twitter. There's actually like a great range of just information savvy and consumption type of people that are on Twitter. So if that is your audience, be on there and be on there real time. I wouldn't recommend scheduling too many tweets. I would keep that more real time. And LinkedIn, that's more of your professional network, but there's been an increase in, sharing articles or blog posts on LinkedIn. Sharing videos is a great way to reach your audience and share your message. So LinkedIn may be, the professionals network, but it has been increasing in engagement, especially surrounding long form content and videos. So just know who you're talking to and know which channels that they're on.
And we always suggest to folks too, don't we, that if they feel a little overwhelmed by all of this, pick a primary platform. So I was on a call yesterday with somebody, and it was like, you've got to first start with yourself and say, well, how do I want to be sharing with people, right? And so by identifying a platform that feels organic and native to you, that's a great place to start. So we leverage multiple channels inside the business, but we put emphasis on the ones that we know our ideal audience is hanging out on, but also are the ones where we feel most compelled to create that type of content. So for example, Aljalyn knows I love writing, and we've got a lot of great copywriters on our team. So we share a lot of that on LinkedIn and on Twitter, because that's where people like to engage with that type of content. And so if you're looking at this list and you're like, I don't know which one to start with, well, which one do you like hanging out on most? And which one would you feel most compelled to show up regularly and consistently on to share with the people that you want to reach?
Thanks, Madeline. All right, this one's a little fun for me. So what's your social impact love language? And what are your followers' social good love language? Act accordingly. So if you're familiar with the 5 love languages, there's words of affirmation, quality time, touch, gift giving, and acts of service. Those are the 5 key love languages. So thought it'd be fun to break it down on your social impact and what you would probably lean more towards doing. So words of affirmation: share news and information about what you're supporting and the impact that your company is making. And words of affirmation, if you're thinking about channels, Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever is more of a verbal type of channel, share your words of affirmation type of social impact messaging there. Quality time. Spend time talking with your community through how you're making changes. And this is a good way to utilize Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube Live, or even Zoom to connect with your audience. Share what you need to share, kind of like town hall style, and then allow your community to ask you questions and be transparent with them. Or even like a Reddit Ask Me Anything, Reddit AMA. That's a good channel for your quality time type of social impact love language. But for that one, be really prepared for all the different types of questions and maybe even criticism. So go into that quality time type of social impact love language with that mindset of really wanting to help and removing as much ego as possible from that. Gift giving. So this one's pretty easy. Donating to causes like Black Lives Matter or to youth care or to period movement, whatever that organization or nonprofit or cause that you really care about, this is a great way to show your love language by donating to those and being transparent about the donations that you are providing. So for an example, there is a local Poulsbo, Washington business, Away with Words. She has been sharing that, X% of proceeds for all purchases. Away with Words is a local bookstore and self-care shop too. Certain percentage of proceeds are going to Black Lives Matter oriented causes. And she's been sharing the amount that she has been able to donate based off of purchases. So there's that, words of affirmation, acts of service, gift giving component all in one of the actions that she has been taking in her social impact. Touch. This one's a little harder during, quarantine and COVID pandemic. So the way that you can express your touch love language for social impact is offering healing or spiritual services to your communities on a local level, or to allow marginalized communities to do a takeover on your social network. So if you think about I think it was Share the Mic that happened 2 weeks ago, where Brene Brown and other Caucasian women gave their Instagram and other social channels to women of color to help amplify their message and share their message and purpose. That is a great way to offer that touch love language, because it's still a physical takeover. So there's that touch and takeover. The final one, and not least, is acts of service. So this part, there's all different types of things that you can do in terms of acts of service. You can maybe even consider, the donations or volunteering as your acts of service for your social impact. But a really good one is hiring an inclusive and diverse staff, voting. Your vote and your voice matters. Remember that quote, like, you make an impact on somebody based off of whatever action you take. So voting is going to be really important. And then even asking your followers how you can boost your impact. Don't just put it all on you. Ask for feedback and ask how you can do better and help more. So these are different types of social impact love languages. I hope they're kind of fun for you there. So these are more like internal ones, but you can also think about what your followers on social media care about. So, if you want to test out all 5 different ones on 5 different types of posts and see which one resonates the most, maybe shift or recalibrate what you're doing for your social impact based off of the feedback and engagement that you're getting on those. Okay, so challenges ahead. Again, this is not business as usual. You are going to get some criticism for speaking your voice. And that's always going to happen when you start speaking your truth more. You may lose followers, but you'll also gain new followers. You'll build a more loyal following for your brand. Not everybody is going to agree with you or what you're doing. That's okay. Continue to be transparent in your actions. Continue to do the work. And this is not a moment. This is a movement. So it's not, constantly buy this, buy now, don't miss out. It's being more compassionate and human-centered in your messaging. It's being inclusive. It's less broadcasting, more engaging. So, and that's a big shift for a lot of companies and brands. We're used to just broadcasting and then receiving, but we are now in a time where we need to give more and show how we're giving and show how we're stepping up and doing that work. Okay, so you may, if you're a brand that's not used to showing and doing more social good and being involved in causes, you may be asking like, well, how do I show ROI? What am I gonna really get out of this? This is a good opportunity to think similarly to how an executive director for a nonprofit thinks. Create your social impact infographics or reports or your financial reports for stakeholders, and map it out on like what your good has been doing for communities. So I have an example here from Youth Care, an organization local to the Seattle area that helps prevent or stop and support youth homeless in the Seattle area. They put together a really easy to follow social impact report, and it's showing people, donors and stakeholders, where their money is going and how it's helping. Is any of this a perfect solution? No, but you can at least see the baby steps, the impact that your social good is doing. So for example, with all the donations that Youth Care received in 2018, it helped over 1,100 youth. That may not sound like a lot, but in the Seattle area, for these youth that were open enough to go to a center like Youth Care, that's a lot of help that has been provided. 73% of youth moved to improved housing. 63% of them were able to find employment. All these different changes and positive impacts were made. So being able to provide a social report or financial report and making it as visual and easy to follow as possible is going to be important to show your social return on investment, your SROI. So you got to think like an executive director here. Okay, we've come so far. A lot has been happening since December, even November, and really has amplified since March. We've all been through a lot, but we've also come so far. So I ask you to not stop. Don't quit. Stay true to your path, your core, your ethos. Continue to be inclusive. Continue to speak up and stand up for people, to use your platform to amplify other people's voices. Just don't stop. Okay, so some key takeaways to help get you started. Again, so we talked about writing down a list or several pages, even if you need to, of your core values. This is going to help you understand your why, your purpose. Brands that have a purpose perform better because they have their goal and their purpose always at the forefront of what they do. And the more human-centered it is, the stronger they are. Think about Patagonia. It's not, well, it may be easy for the CEO to just be like, well, we're not going to work with this partner anymore. We're going to only use sustainable, cruelty-free products or, materials to make this jacket. We're going to do all this work to help improve the environment. Their purpose is always at the forefront, and they have been transparent for over 20 years on what they're doing. Create a calendar of notable dates for amplifying your reach. So if you think about Independence Day coming up, what kind of message do you want to share? What is that caption going to be? And what are the different hashtags that you can leverage to help expand your reach? So calendaring out. You don't always have to know what it is, but at least know what's coming up is going to be so useful to you in planning out how you're going to share your social impact. Know who you want to reach and where they're hanging out and consuming information. I cannot express enough to not just broadcast, but broadcast and engage with people and be where they're at. And if you, like Madeline said, feel more comfortable on Instagram, be on Instagram. Use all the different capabilities that Instagram has: live, IGTV, stories, feeds, direct messaging, commenting, and searching. So many capabilities. Know when your target audience is online and engaging. So Facebook does a really good job of telling you when your audience is online, but if you don't have something, if you don't use Facebook, if you think about when you're online and when you're consuming information, it's probably about the same time that your audience is consuming information. So know when and where to reach them. Diversify your feed. Again, what information are you feeding yourself? Because that is going to be similar information that you're going to feed to your target audience. If you want to be able to schedule, know your tools to schedule and broadcast. Hootsuite, Sprout Social, or Buffer. Hootsuite is more affordable. Sprout Social is more dynamic. But again, remember to check your content depending on what is happening in the world. And you may need to make tiny shifts. Cite your sources, do the research, do the work before you share information, because you're using your platform to feed people information. So make sure it's coming from credible, reliable sources. Then finally, share visually appealing informational content. So if you think about the days of World War II and the visuals that were shared, or even if you think about when the civil rights movement was happening, what kind of videos were being shared? What did the posters look like? And because those, whatever we have been shown in history class or whatever we're able to find, were impactful enough to stay evergreen and to show up in any kind of Google or DuckDuckGo search that we do. So keep it visually engaging and appealing. Bright colors, utilizing different sounds and tones and expressions to really share your message. Do you want it to just be an illustration? Do you want there to be text? Do you want it to be just black and white with a bold statement? Whatever that is, be consistent with it and make it as powerful as possible, because the more powerful it is, the more it'll resonate and linger. Okay, the work continues. So let's do some social get together. If you need help mapping out what your social impact plan and marketing should look like, what your messaging should be, or even to help you identify what your core values and brand should be, we do provide creative services. If you go to fearlessintraining.com/creative, you can see the different services that we do for branding, for marketing, and business development and strategy. You can also follow us on Instagram. We are on Facebook and LinkedIn, Fearless, but Instagram is, where we're hanging out a lot and engaging. Anything else to add there, Madeline?
No, this was phenomenal, and I really appreciate you just coming by and sharing your expertise with everyone. I would open up the floor if anybody has questions that come through. I would say too, if there is any sense of overwhelm when you look at all this information, it's really important to think about the causes that feel authentic to your brand, because some people feel like there's so much going on right now in the world that they don't know if they have a leg to stand up on each and every one of these issues. And so we think it's really important for people to remember that, even if you're just taking one issue and lending your platform to that, that's going to make an impact. It's also going to really define who you attract to your business as well, and the kind of people you serve, because they're going to see that you stand for more than just making money. And I had a really interesting conversation this morning with a previous client of ours, and she was just talking about, the difference between how people want to work with brands that are bigger than themselves and bigger than just that mission of making money, and rather are focused on a mission that has to do with social good. And so thinking about, what is that one cornerstone cause that you want to be, bringing your brand back to again and again, so that this doesn't just feel like a one-time thing, but rather than something evergreen. So if anybody has any questions here, we're going to go ahead and just open up the chat. These can be specific questions about actions you could take in your business personally, or they could be questions around, which platforms you might want to use. I had seen a question come through during the presentation. Somebody was wondering about, is the best way to start with one primary platform or to pick a couple? And if so, what would the advice be that, Aldrin, you might give somebody when they're evaluating which platform they might start speaking up on first?
Okay. Before I get into that, just to prove that we do cite our sources, here they are if you want them. There's all different types of sources there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this. So should I do all the different ones, or should I just focus on one? My recommendation would be to have your business set up on all the different channels, but to engage on the one that you feel the most comfortable with, because you'll just natively know what kind of content to share. So I am an Instagram person, so I will natively know to share more visual content. I'll know to share what kind of content to share on, to post on stories versus the feed, because stories are temporary, feeds are permanent, unless if you archive them. But I would set yourself up and make sure that you're optimized on all the different social channels, but put the work into whichever one feels the most comfortable for you. So if you love to be talking consistently all the time with everything real time, Twitter will be a great one for you. Or if you're more visual and love videos and photos and illustrations, then Instagram is the one for you. Pick one and strengthen that.
I love that. What about in terms of like creating content? There was a question here that somebody was saying, you know, I want to use Instagram, but I'm not that great at like picking and choosing and figuring out what I should put in my feed so that it's really pretty. What are some recommendations you'd offer somebody who's just getting started on kind of building out an Instagram feed?
So there's great tools such as unsplash.com or even Canva, where you can find, so for Unsplash, you can find great photos to share on Instagram if you want, or Canva has plenty of templates for you to be able to utilize for Instagram. But if you are following an influencer or a brand that is sharing great content that you want to share, it's okay to either use a post like repost or to take a screenshot, or use something like gramsave.com, take that Instagram link, paste it, and download the photo. That's a hacker tip for you. And share that. You just have to make sure that you're crediting the person's content that you're sharing. So you don't necessarily have to create your own content to start out with. You can find and source content to be able to share while you're figuring out, what does my brand look like? What kind of visuals should I have? And where do I put my logo? So being able to use third-party content is fine. Just make sure that you're crediting it.
Okay, last question we have time for today was how do you turn this into a process? So for example, if you're somebody who's just getting started and you really want to get more consistent in your social sharing, particularly in this present moment, what is a process that somebody could do to basically sit down and set up social media in advance, so that because I think a lot of people are like, it's hard to show up consistently because you feel like it's something you've got to do every day. So will you just describe a little bit in terms of the way we prepare content in advance for both our clients and internally, just to give people an idea of what that process could look like?
Yeah, so we do a 30-day advance content outline, and then we create the content. We do create it 30 days out in advance, but we don't create it so that way we can't change things if we need to. But having a 30-day outline is going to be helpful. So if you use something like Excel or Word to start out with, you can use their calendar templates to map out, like, okay, on this day I want to share this and this content, and here's the captions that can go there. That's one way to be able to use your Office suite. Or you can use tools like Hootsuite to be able to draft and schedule content. And there's not a calendar function to it, but you can still at least like look chronologically and see what I have mapped out. And to start out with, maybe just do 1 to 2 posts per week. So then that way you're not overwhelming yourself and focusing too much on the content piece of things.
Awesome. Well, that was a whole lot to take in for everyone who joined us. We're going to be putting a playback up on the website. So if you need to get access to this content or you want to share it with somebody you know, make sure to come back. Same link as where you registered. So by the end of the week, we should have a playback up there. And spread the word. You know, if you know anybody who's thinking about bringing social impact into their brand, but maybe needs some help getting started, make sure to let them know about this session. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Thank you, Aljalyn, for crafting this beautiful content. And we'll be in touch with you all with more education on how you can be making an impact with your brand. Bye, everybody.